Casual Magic has been sponsored by Quiver, maker of the Quiver and Bolt deck cases and other fine deck holding accessories. Use the code CASUAL on their website for 10% off your order. We're also sponsored by Architect, the premier site for hosting your decks on the internet. I love them and they love me, and it seems like a good reason for you to use them. You can also support Casual Magic directly by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/ShivamB. And now, on with the show. Hello and welcome to Casual Magic, the show where we talk about the fun side of Magic the Gathering. My name is Shivam Bhatt, and Casual Magic is brought to you by Quiver and Architect and my patrons at patreon.com/ShivamB. Today, I'm actually really stoked because this is unexpectedly cool. Somebody that a lot of my friends and a lot of y'all on Twitter have been like, you should talk to one of these dudes here. And I'm like, if they'll talk to me, sure. So I have with me today Ify Nwadiwe, who is the host of the Actually show on Dropout, and like one just like big mega internet comedian these days. And that's just sick because I'm a nerd for comedy and gaming and magic. So I'm very, very excited to see you today because like my friends all love your show and it's sick. And that's really, really cool. So I'm like, oh, this is rad. I'm excited.
Oh, that's super dope. Yeah, I'm glad everyone's been enjoying it. When I took over, I was a little bit nervous in the sense because, I took over season 9, which means for 8 seasons it was running. So after 8 seasons of a show, you're getting a new host with a whole new vibe. And it's been great because me and Brian David Gilbert are so aligned. Like we knew we loved mech animes, we came in together, and I was this huge, magic nerd who got sucked in about like a year ago at this point. I was at
so recently?
Yeah, I recently jumped back in with like OTJ. That's when I hopped back in because I was just in and out the whole time. Like started in high school, popped out. Then when I like was working my like day job before all of this stuff, I jumped back in like right around Scars of Mirrodin, right up until Rise of Eldrazi. Then, I left that day job to chase my dream. So then I popped out yet again. And then I started hosting a show for Geek and Sundry, called Mulligan. So then I'm back in, and I even went all the way to Vegas for the Grand Prix for Modern Masters 2015. And that was a good time. I mean, by saying going, I meant like I got a ticket and they, Channel Fireball hooked it up. I did not, I'm not of the skill to just be like invited. I want to measure everyone's expectations. If you see me at MagicCon, do not bring your A game, bring your D game. Let's start there. So,
look, bro, I'm on a show called Casual Magic. We know my audience knows where we're at here.
You got some people. You got your Kyle Hills of the world, your Joe Johnsons, just swinging.
Joe,
yeah,
he will murder you with a smile and just like, buddy.
Oh, here's my new favorite Joe Johnson story. We were at Command Fest, and we were there as the guests, and we were putting these bounty hunter pods so that we could play with people, and if they beat us, then they would get a raffle ticket. And I'm just kind of playing real chill, just they're giving us precons anyway,
exactly.
And apparently Joe had no mercy.
Oh no.
Just like destroyed his pod, which is wild because it was a precon. So I was like, I don't even know. Like the precons are getting strong, but I don't know how you're the speed. And just like, yeah.
It's funny because like I've been on Tabletop Talks and I've played with him before, and my man, like even if he is like the bounty, he's gonna begrudge you every ticket you get from him. He's like, oh, you're not getting a single thing out of me unless you squeeze the blood from this rock. It's like, homie, chill. We're all here for fun.
Yeah, no. We're having fun. Yeah, these are precons. This is not. I could see if we were over in the CEDH section. He was like, no, turn C.
Yeah, dude. I don't know. Like, Joe plays pretty close to CDH. Let's be real here for a second.
Yes. Though I think the way Rachel described it to me is Joe plays as close to
Oh yeah,
CEDH as you can get.
with
But
plausible deniability.
yeah, but you're casual. It is the highest power level you can achieve and still get away with calling it casual.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I mean, look, dude, I came there with my little fluffy like 4 out of 10 or whatever, and he's just like, scraping the floor with me, and I'm like, okay, I obviously misread the assignment.
Yeah, I know.
So,
Man.
how'd you? Because like LA, it seems like is a hotbed for entertainers who also play Magic. It feels like there's a dumb number of us down there,
Oh yeah.
and how did you get back into Magic recently? And like, how did you like start hooking up with folks like Joe and Rachel and everybody?
Well, I think it was just being, adjacent, I think, to most of all the Magic players. Like I knew, Kibler from back when I did
Right.
Mulligan on Geek and Sundry, and I met a lot of creators there. And, we still stayed in touch as I like bounced around in my career. And I went to PAX East and I was playing with my friend Annika Sila, and they were
Mm,
like, "Oh, you want to play Commander? Like, you can use one of my decks. If you want, you can use this deck that I use. That's more powerful than the one that I gave you."
sure.
And it was the one she gave me was the bear that or no, it was like the bug that like takes the keywords
Oh,
from
right, like Zathrid or whatever it is.
yeah, yeah.
No, it's like
Um
some X's and Y's in there.
yeah, and because Zathrid, and I just played it the best way that I can play it, which is dumping stuff, and they were kind of newer to it, so I just kind of like made short work. And I was like, "Oh, this deck isn't as bad as you think it is. I think you're just playing it wrong, right?"
Oh
That's the thing,
no.
right? As like because they were newer, and I think like I just got my girlfriend into it, and I started her off with Daxos because it's simple,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And but it's unfortunately the Daxos precon, and those older precons were not the precons of today, which can step into the
no.
arena with everyone else. Like I went on Commander at Home with the Urza precon fresh out the deck and won. So it for me, it's like okay, yeah, this one is kind of weaker, but it'll teach you all the mechanics you need to know, like the experience counters and sigils in there, so about token creation. And now before we got here, I took long because I had to get one win against her because she was beating me all morning. I was like, look, I don't mean to keep you waiting, but I can't go record this with 4-0. I needed to needed to get my dub.
I love that.
Yeah, so yeah, I play it and I'm just hooked. Like because it was one night, I think it was like night one of the con. And so right before the panel, we were doing the Actually panel. I went straight to the card section. I bought the Urza deck that we're talking about. I bought the Frodo deck, which is so funny because that people like it, not for me. I think that was just too complicated. Me coming into like two commanders. What's all this? And then I didn't even get to play them again. I just like it ended, but I got back home. I had all these cards and I was just kind of like searching around and I was talking about playing it. So all my friends who I was still friends with that played Magic was like, oh, word, come through. And it was just all history from there. And so,
Yeah,
having it.
because it's like wild. Like I know, and I've talked to so many people down there who are just like in esports or in nerd content or in like work at Riot or whatever it is, and are just like jamming games of Commander all the time. And I'm up here in the Bay Area. I'm like, everybody's having fun there. I should go like 8 hours south and hang out with you guys. But like,
Yes,
it's like,
I
okay, they're
know.
all standard grinders. It's not fun.
Oh, I
Um,
know. And don't worry, Jarvis Johnson is morphing into that. It is truly nonstop. He hit me up and and he was like, "Can I convince you to get into standard?" I was like, "Yeah, that's easy." Because I was big into standard. That's what I played. I
Yeah,
actually like all of like EDH was very new to me. Even when I was doing Mulligan,
sure.
and Kyle Hill would come up with his deck, and I'd be like, okay, no, because he kept talking about, he was like, yeah, I do this and then I do these infinite combos. I was like, that doesn't sound fun. It sounds like not a good time for me. It sounds like you're gonna have fun and I won't. But then, I threw out, because one of my like closest friends growing up has just always been playing Magic nonstop and just commandering it up. So he's like, I have like a few decks that, like, I had a Duretti deck, but I never really got into it. Like I have gotten into it recently. Like
Mm.
even now I'm just like, okay, what is it? Also, I got it. It was K-Thrill
Yeah, it's
Aspect
Catherine.
Warper.
I was like
Catherall Aspect Warper.
Zathrid. No, not
Yeah.
quite. It's Catherine. It's from the Ikoria commander set.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that
But yeah,
card
that
rules.
oh yeah, because it was very interesting because Annika, when we were playing it, and this was like brand new to Commander, and that's what they were saying. They were like, "Oh, I'm new," and I was like, "Okay." And they were like, "Well, I don't want to kill your creatures because I don't want Catherall to get all this stuff." And I was like, "Well, then I'm just going to keep beating you up with the creatures." I was like, the thing with commander is you don't worry about just the commander. You still have to, some commander games you win without even bringing out your commander. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, like you. I mean, you can't feel bad all the time. You got to
Yes.
win some point.
Yeah.
So let's talk about you for a second, because I think people will find it fascinating. Like, because first off, it's really, really great. It's weird to say this in 2024 where there's so many of us, but I just love seeing brown and black people in geek spaces becoming big time. It's just like, as a kid, we never had that. I love seeing it now. I love that for the kids of today, we've got a minority presence because like we're nerds too.
Oh
We
yeah.
went home after school and watched the same Dragon Ball Z on like TV at nighttime, right? Like, it's not like we grew up in a different world.
Oh yeah.
I'm still reading D&D books. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, I know. It is interesting to kind of see this shift, because I think that, it's all about like visibility, right? And what you
Right.
saw, and the portrayal of the nerd character in all media was always like scrawny white man, which is
If
why,
it's not just like, the Indian immigrant with the
yeah.
glasses in his forehead.
Well, that's with you in the hacker tech support.
Oh, yeah.
Always,
Pen protected.
That's the closest brown people got to being nerds. Like the black hacker in Die Hard. I'm like, yeah, that was the first big nerd representation. And I think kind of having these spaces that showcase different people of different
Yeah.
races, gender, color, creed, yada yada yada. It really kind of does help, even though, because I feel like some people, especially when you get the people who are salty about it, is like, I don't know why it matters and this that. But like, I think a smaller example of that is when I was coming up in UCB, Upright Citizens Brigade, and I
Oh,
was on an
sweet.
all black improv team, and there were so many people who were like, oh, I decided to like start taking classes because I saw y'all on stage. I didn't, this let me know that this was a space I can be in. And I
That's
think
so
that
good.
there's just like, the people who like just want to just go where they want and don't really think of that. But then there's a lot of people who only try and occupy spaces they see themselves in,
Yeah.
because they want that like companionship. They want to be around people they know that they'll, kind of have that in. And I think that's just, it's like both sides, right?
Like when I was younger, when I went to my first Gen Con in like 99 or 2000 or something, I was like the brownest dude, not only in that building, but like that state,
Yeah.
in
Oh
like
yeah.
Wisconsin or whatever. And I was just like, wait, did no other like people of color play D&D growing up? Was I the only one? Like,
Yeah.
and it's super weird. But now, like, I was just at Gen Con this past year, in August or early at the beginning of August or whatever. And it's just a sea change of just like everybody is there, everybody's happy to be there. There's no like super dominance of any particular group or anything. I'm like, damn, man, this is the world I want my kid to see. I'm really like, just, it makes me so happy that nerdity is now as vibrant as like it could be, you know?
Yeah, I think because there was a level of stigma there, right? Like,
Mm.
it wasn't always cool to be a nerd, like I said, Revenge of the Nerds,
No,
and
it
the
sure wasn't.
idea of trying to, do these nerdy things weren't for you. And I think also just especially me who grew up with an immigrant parent, right? Like the
Mm.
idea of like the way you use your leisure time, which is
Yeah.
how which is they my dad wanted me to have just the minimum amount of time. All other
Mm.
time should be studying and
Mhm.
getting ready to be a
Mm.
doctor or lawyer or,
Mhm.
some other high paying job. But, I think in a funny, interesting way, kind of seeing a lot of like, nerds of color in these spaces, but also just as content creator on
Yeah.
screen, it helps those parents see that,
There's
maybe
a
that is.
viable life path.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they're not going to, but at least we're there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, at least we can be used as evidence that will still get denied.
Yeah. It just, I don't know. I didn't mean to automatically go deep into the race thing right away, but
Oh, no, it's
I'm
fine.
I'm old and I'm
Yeah,
just thrilled to see, like, I'm one of the most prominent like brown people in Magic,
yeah,
which is weird. It's
yeah,
so, and it irritates me because I'm like, I shouldn't be. I'm just a nerd who talks about Commander all the time. But watching, like, when I go to like place, like I was in Amsterdam and some Indian dudes come up to me and was like, yo man, I'm glad you're representing for us. And I'm like, so am I now. That's awesome. Let's go. Uh, it's cool. And it just fills me with happiness that we have finally been able to carve a space for ourselves in this, especially like because I came up in like game journalism. I started
yeah.
out like one up at EGM and things
Oh,
like that.
dope. Oh, I
Yeah.
remember One Up. Yeah.
Yeah, like I was in the video games industry for a long time before, nobody is anymore. But like now I see people like, Austin or Geeta or all these other writers who are like black and brown and Latino and whatever. And I'm just like, yeah, I was the only one. And now there's so
Yeah.
many more and it's awesome. It's like, yeah, let's go. Um,
Yeah, and I think that also just has like, the access, right?
yeah.
What I always kind of attribute it to is because a lot of times the major thing that's said is like, oh well, there's just who I'm friends with, and that's who I'm friends with, and this. And I think that is definitely true. I think that a lot of people are only friends with one,
Yeah, right.
race. And I feel like, people of color are often encouraged to make friends, outside of their race, specifically because of just the systemic
Well,
issues
you got to be friends
that.
with somebody, and there aren't enough of us to be friends with just us.
Yeah. So and I think I think also what kind of the double-edged sword of like this like move to the internet is it got to show like all the dimensions of people. We no longer can just look at someone and like make assumptions, right? It's like,
Mhm.
oh, you can look at like all these things that they're saying and realize that you have so much in common, and that even though you may have completely different backgrounds, we are connecting over this one thing. And I think that it slowly started with going to conventions and seeing
Mm,
and making friends. And I think a thing like Magic too, seeing other people, sitting across from them, playing with them, building a relationship, it just kind of makes you realize like, oh, okay, I actually can connect with this person even though I think we're so
exactly.
different.
I find Magic is such a great example for that because of the fact that like it was an international game to begin with. I mean, yeah, it was in Europe and America and like Japan, so it's not very broad, but there's still a lot of people there. And there's a lot of people of every type of ethnicity in these countries who play. And like now when we go to like Magic events and stuff, and you're like in LA, I saw like just pictures. I'm like, damn, there's the whole thing, man. It's awesome. I mean, yeah. So if you go to Kansas for a Magic Con, maybe it's going to be a little different, but
Yeah.
that's just the world we live in.
Yeah.
But so how did like you came from an immigrant family? I know what that's like, and
Yeah.
I didn't get to become a comedian. So how did you manage to do that?
Oh man, it was a fight. It was not. It was not. It was not accepted. There was no excitement for it.
Oh yeah, no.
Uh, yeah, I just always liked making people laugh. Like it
Mm.
just was something. I was just talking to someone the other day. One of my earliest memories is like accidentally eating hot sauce as a toddler, and everyone kind of like laughing about
Oh
it as I
no.
was like rubbing my tongue and kind of feeling good, seeing everyone like smiling and happy in that moment. And I think that I've always kind of had that element, always was the class clown, always. And then in high school, I found something called comedy sports, which
Mm.
if you're unaware of it, it's basically short form improv, very similar to Who's Line. And I joined up there, started doing stuff, and I was always just kind of out of this world in a way because I had ADHD, but I also had immigrant parents, which means I didn't have ADHD.
Let
Um,
me
and
tell you.
yeah, so like I was just kind of like I just wasn't locked in in the way
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
a lot of other successful creative Nigerians have gotten like great degrees and stuff. I was not on that path. I started doing improv in Orange County for a bit, and I started working just a full time job, and then eventually I heard a WTF episode with Donald Glover where he was talking. He was like, "Man, there's not that many black people in improv," and he started like listing off the people. And at the time I was performing in Orange County, but like it was like a big fish, small pond thing.
Hmm.
And when I didn't hear my name, I was like, well, that's where I need to go because I think Donald Glover's great. I need to
Yeah.
be where he's performing. So I like everything, my whole life at the time kind of upended because I was like, okay, I'm going to work this full time job, but I'm going to be auditioning. I'm going to be taking classes. So I would like leave work 30 minutes early because I didn't have a car at the time to take the Metro Link down to LA to take my
Jesus.
class. Then from the class, run to the latest improv show I can see so I can see my two improv shows for the class. And then take a bus, get home at like 2 in the morning, wake up at 5 to go back to work. It was just like, but like it was the most exciting day of the week for me because I felt
That
like I
sounds
finally was working
exhausting and
towards
awesome.
something. Oh, it was like so exhausting, but I was so happy to do it because it was just that thing where you kind of finally find your purpose, where everything before just felt like it was formulaic. I was just going through the motions. And for the first time, I was like, oh, I know what I'm doing. So then after that, yeah, it was all history. Eventually, I got suspended from work for taking off days to do auditions, to do like college humor auditions for like maybe $100.
Yeah.
Um, and I had to like get a like part-time job, but I moved to LA proper, and just kind of just grinded it out and just went, and it was kind of just it was just off to the races from there.
It's funny because like I knew you had improv background. I mean, I didn't know that, but I could tell because I watched you on Prof Show, and Ben Ulmer is one of my dear, dear friends. And you started with like just this like grumpy minor character.
Oh
You just
yeah.
made a random voice while you're just sitting there, and Ben's like, all right, we're gonna is that what we're gonna do? Let's roll with this. And
Yeah.
then it just became a whole show wide bit. And I'm like, this is the greatest. And I knew right then and there, I'm like, this guy has the chops. You know how to like roll with this all the way down. And it was funny as hell, man. It was so good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I feel like I just fall into bits where and it also just helps me, focus up a little bit. Whereas
Yeah.
if I let my like brain just bounce around doing some silly bit, I can also just freely play some magic and and not be distracted, basically.
Yeah, that's wild because like I can see that because it gives you something you have to focus on. It gives you something you're like, I have to recontextualize this card within the character I've just created. Um, but it was funny. I was like, oh, can go either real sour or it's gonna get real good. And you were lucky, man. Playing with Ulmer, he's very good at facilitating whatever it is you want to do.
Oh yeah.
And like, yeah, the guy's got incredible skills as
Oh
an
yeah, just that
improv guy.
yes
So
and,
yeah.
yes and committing to the bit. And then after that, we're just having some good times.
Yeah. Well, that must have been a lot of fun, right?
Oh yeah, that was a blast. And that's one of the reasons I like, playing, a bunch of these commander play shows because, when we were doing Mulligan, we were just doing like standard. And I think sometimes we would do a draft. And I think when you're playing more of those competitive games, you're like thinking about what you can do if you're getting off what you want. Where Commander really is just hanging with friends, just hanging with friends and just goofing off.
I mean, I'm glad to hear you say that because that's basically what we're trying to make Commander into.
Yeah.
I'm on the CAG with Olivia and oh geez, my pen. Yeah, and so like I'm one of the people who gets to help shape the format. And one of the things people are like, oh, how come you're not supporting tournament? But like, no, Commander is supposed to be like board game night with your buddies.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be you go, you hang out, we're having a grand old time. The card game just happens to be the thing we're doing, right? Like, it's supposed to be chill. It's supposed to be funny and fun, and like you can make with it whatever you want. It's open source. I don't care. But like when I see people who are like, I got to play with some people who are like Magic Hall of Famers and who are just trying Commander out for the first time, and they're like, you know what? This is just relaxing. I can just turn off my combo brain and I can just play these doofy big cards that I just loved playing as a kid. And there's no sweat. And I'm like, exactly. This is what we have it for.
Yes.
It's so good.
You just let these goofy things go off.
Yeah.
And you try and make the weirdest, synergies happen.
Yeah. Like for me, it's like, I look at it like each deck is like a D&D story being told because like my commander and then all the cards in it are basically improving this story that is going on with the rest of the table. And I like to just kind of like place myself in this world and be like, how do I justify what just happened? But it's like, I don't know. I like playing D&D a lot. I like being the DM. So Commander is like Magic's version of D&D for me. And I just really enjoy that.
Oh, I feel that where you really are just like, yep, we're just seeing what scene's about to play out here, especially with how much, bargaining and deals are just a part of the game. It's not just, the card interaction. It's also what goofy stuff are you going to try and prevent, or you're going to try and see if it can happen.
I mean, you gotta play the politics, man. You gotta get other people to do the thing you want, and sometimes that means lying or just gently encouraging them to be like, "Hey, that thing is real bad for you." And oh gosh. Mm-hmm.
I know. I was playing a Commander game at that same event, and there was someone, and it got really, really close towards the end there, and in the end he wins, and he was like, "Yeah, this is what Commander's all about." He's like, it's not about the politics; it's down to card interaction. And then I just smash cut remember to all the times leading up to this moment where he was like, "Oh, what is he doing? What is he doing?" It's like, oh, that isn't I like what people consider politics. Like there's like, oh, if I actively, am saying something, then that's politicking. But if I'm just like suggesting and I'm just
like, I'm not saying nothing, I'm just saying that guy got a howling mind. Just putting it out there into the world.
I know. Especially when it's like, because I was playing the Narcy. It was the enchantment precon, but I switched out and had Narcy. I finished the saga. Everyone took some damage, and I healed, and all of a sudden, I became the arch enemy. Problem is this other person had Caesar, and I have to assume they might not have played Caesar before because everyone acted like I was the bad guy when I removed Caesar. It's like, oh no, you don't let Caesar. Caesar does not stay out. We get Caesar back to the command zone every time, or you're going to get lasered.
Yeah, dude, Caesar's deck is. I mean, that deck rules, but it's also just brutal. Like, you will just die.
Just even as a precon, it's like this one is like, there are a few out of the box precons that the power level is like surprisingly like really good.
Because I was talking to the designers of the Universe Beyond precons, and they're like, look, the idea here is all these cards are thematic and in frame, and they all look really nice together. So we want to make them higher power level than normal precons because people don't want to break these decks apart. They want to just keep them as a keepsake, and I want you to be able to keep playing it and be able to play it at stores or at events or if cards come out later. Because like, it sucks if you buy a super fancy all-in-one thing and like it's not a playable deck or whatever.
Yeah,
But
because
but some of those are just real busted.
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, and especially I'm learning very quickly how one-on-one commander just how quickly a great deck in a pod on one-on-one, because one-on-one token creation is king, just straight up. I was
Overwhelm them.
yeah, I was playing with my friend Amanda Turner. She was on Top Chef, and she had just the wildest like human creation, or no, it was angel creation deck,
Oh
and it was
Jesus.
just out of hand. I was like, I can't begin, even with my Necrons, which are, you know, pretty terrible on their own. But the angel, it was just like every human just helped the neck. It was just like a watching the longest game of leapfrog. And I was like, well, I made a mistake.
I mean, I've had decks where it's like in one-on-one, they're just brutal and unforgiving. And then decks where it's like, oh, this actually doesn't do anything if there aren't like two other players on the table.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, this sucks.
Oh yeah, especially those. Yeah, when it's like you get blank for each other opponent, and you're
Yeah.
like, well,
And you're like, well, I guess one.
yeah. I guess I get nothing, huh?
Yeah, I guess this sucks and I'm dying. Good.
Yeah,
Love that for
cool.
nobody.
Yeah, we're having fun.
So can we talk about Dropout for a second?
Of course.
Oh, actually, no. Before we do that, I wanted to actually talk about something you had done. We had mentioned briefly off camera before we started. You wrote for one of my favorite comedy late night shows for a very long time called At Midnight, which I used to watch with my wife religiously up until like in like the early or the mid 2010s or whatever the hell it was.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right about, because I was writing with them up until like I think 2016 is right around when I left. I wrote for a year, and yeah, we were talking about how like once you know Trump was in office, it was kind of rinse repeat.
It's just like the jokes they weren't funny anymore. Now everything's just sad.
Yeah, because you're like yeah, this is funny, but there's also our reality. So you know, yeah, it was yeah very. But I was saying like yeah, up until that, it was like hyping and fun because we got to do the Anthony Antamanik and James Adomian did the Bernie v. Trump like debate on At Midnight, and it was just completely ridiculous, but it was just like fun because of it, because we were just all having fun, and then it wasn't fun.
But so I'm curious because like how does that like what is the process there? Because what it was is basically like Chris would stand up there and ask like questions, and then like the comedians would basically do like bits or whatever in response. And I know like one of my favorite comics, Hari Kondabolu, was there like all the time, and like Ron Funches and stuff. I'm like, these guys are so funny and so fast. But like, what does writing for that mean?
So writing for that, you know, as far as like At Midnight went,
or even just
on
like shows like that in general, right?
You pretty much wrote like the setup of this. So we would like sit around. We had a great team of researchers that would basically scour the internet for all the funniest things that might have happened the day before, and then they kind of pitch it to us as a room, and all the writers would kind of like riff on it and like make jokes, and if it had a good riff, then we were like, okay, that's one. What's the game that we can what's the funniest game that we riffed? Okay, that person, go ahead and write up that prompt. And then you know, we basically fashion all the prompts that would be on the show, and then we would, as a writers group, just write all these example jokes to kind of give as a packet to the talent that comes in. And then as a writer, you're paired with the comedians and guests who come in, and you're either kind of like, you know, brainstorming new jokes, or kind of like pitching jokes from the packet and making it into their own words. Or you just had like some folks came in and they're like, oh, I'm good, I'm gonna just rock with it. Like Kurt Bronneler, he liked to kind of do it on his own. You know, Ron's the homie, and like that's how we became friends. Was I worked with him once, and it was great, and he was like real chill. Like
he's so funny. He's just like perfect stoner comedy. I love it.
Oh yeah, just knocked it out the park. And yeah, that's pretty much all that went into it. And then like, you know, we when we weren't shooting, we were pretty much just coming up with like hashtag wars and kind of like, different kind of like evergreen bits that can just kind of be in the rotation. So it was like
Yeah,
really
I had a
chill.
few of my tweets show up on that show. I was very, very excited.
Yeah. And I mean, it was such a blast. And I think it was, you know, the new one is great and fine, but I don't think there's just quite anything like that moment in time on the internet
Yeah,
where it just, took over. Like like whether you watch the show or not, everybody was playing hashtag wars. Like people were
right.
finding out about the show via hashtag wars because it would take over Twitter. It
Yeah,
would be the highest trending thing. And so people would like, jump in, see if their jokes made it, especially once they found out that it pops up on TV,
yeah.
you
It was
know?
awesome. It was
Yeah,
so
and
cool.
it was great, but now we're in the era of like they've, sucked all organic, you
Yeah.
know, just anything out of it. The way that, because I not only on At Midnight, I worked with like a social media marketing company for a short bit, and thinking about the way Twitter used to work and how it
Right.
works now is so what thinking about the way Twitch used to work too. Like all these sites where before, it was like whoever is talking about something the most or whoever is using the hashtag the most, that is the thing that is trending for everyone. Everyone knows what's trending because everyone's talking about it and everyone can be in on the conversation.
Mm,
And now it's all like bought and advertised and
yeah.
manufactured. And it is just not the same.
They've
Like,
gamed the system and it's just not fun anymore.
yeah. And I think it's the same way, like back in the day, Twitch was throwing up, the like
Mm,
talent that they wanted you to see. Like, I was there when Geek and Sundry started, and it was me, Hector, Navarro, Steph Woodburn, Becca Scott. And we were like the original host. And then there was Critical Role, and like Critical Role, they were like, oh, this is a crazy new show. And they had Critical Role like for like 6+ months on the front page every Thursday, every show. And you would never, that just is not going to happen now. And that was back when they were like working with creators to like see, like to have them up there. And now Twitch is like, I think that Twitch is in a tough position now too,
mhm.
because I think, and this is all just me guessing, I'm not on the back end, so I really don't know, but I imagine like Twitch is kind of like, unique viewership is not what it was back in the day, where back in the day you had people who were just coming to Twitch so they
Mm,
would see you on the front page, and so you would have growth like that. And now like, the front page of Twitch has been determined for so long, it's either a sponsored stream or it's,
mhm.
someone, and so like no one
There's
bothers
no
just
organic
sitting on
surfacing anymore. There's no like
yes.
finding people. There's no like the thing that used to make these good was that there was handpicked curation and
Yeah.
that there was like somebody whose job it was to find cool things and share them. It was the same way as like being a network producer in old days of linear TV. Somebody is putting that show there for you to watch. Nowadays we don't have any like unifying TV that people can bond around. We have got like streaming stuff. It's like, oh yeah, I watched this one show, and so anybody who's got that streaming network can talk to you about it, but we don't have a unifying through line that gives us kind of a cultural handhold to do this with. Twitch, at least for a while, like there was a time when friggin' Evo would come on and the Street Fighter finals would be on, and people you didn't even know cared about Street Fighter at all would be talking about it on Twitter all day, and it would be like the biggest thing. And it's weird because they've just gone to some sort of weird algorithmic automation, or just literally, like you said, somebody pays them to buy the front page for some event or something, and there's no organic surfacing. I found so many weird, interesting streamers just back in the day because
Oh
they'd be like,
yeah.
somebody just pops them on the front page randomly. It's like, oh, this dude got four people watching, but now he's my favorite streamer because he's funny as hell or whatever, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, and it truly, that all of that, they kind of had like the hardest thing to accomplish, which was like discoverability. They just had
Mm,
a hard time doing it because the way Twitch works is if you click a game or you search a game and you go to the live channels, it's always going to show you the viewers from highest to lowest, which is always going to keep the biggest streamers on the top. And
mm,
if you're trying to grow, it just makes it even harder. And the problem with that is that the solution is very simple. You need to have, the like a kind of mix. There has to be a certain, something to mix it up. But if you are, one of the bigger streamers, are going to complain about trying to change that system because that
Mm-hmm.
system benefits you. And I think, unfortunately, and this is just all personal opinion, but I do mean this. I mean, just knowing the way that Twitch was made, which was coming from Justin TV, and there
Mm-hmm.
were a lot of people from the earlier days of Twitch who kind of grandfathered into what it is now. And you have had a lot of staff who are friends with those people. So
Mm-hmm.
it was just gamed from the jump, and that is what it is. I don't think
I mean,
it's that
wait.
hard to kind of put that math together. I don't think I'm talking out of term. It was like you just had
Well, when Twitch was a tiny little company, right? Then it's very easy for them to bond with the guys who are being the biggest
yes.
creators, and as they go up and they go up, they're just going to go up together, right? I mean, that's not even collusion. That's just business. That's just how
Yeah, that's
things work.
business, and there's loyalty, but at a certain point you are what's there's a word for it where it's gosh, I can't. It's basically what the WGA ended up having to fire our agents for, because and if you don't remember all that, so the WGA a few years ago made all
That's the
writers.
Writers Guild of America.
Yeah, the Writers Guild of America, which is our union, had us fire all of our agents because what happened was all the major agencies also had production companies. And what was happening is they would do all these quote unquote packaging deals, where if I sold a show to a studio, the agent will be like, hey, is it cool if me and the network will package it and we won't even take our commission from this? So you just get paid out. So like on paper, you're like, oh, yeah, this is great. But what you didn't know is then they are going behind closed doors with the studio and they're making their own deal for themselves and the studio. And then at the same time, they're hiring actors and writers from their own agency for the best deal for the show, because now they are producers producing that show. So you are not
You're getting it. Yeah.
it's like you're not operating with their best interests at heart, because now you have more to gain.
And that becomes more like the Japanese or Korean studio system of just like, I have a show and I have a stable full of actors and they act in my show and they air on the network that I own. And it becomes this weird vertical monopoly almost.
Yeah. It's so I think that's what kind of happened there, is like, in the earlier years and as it grew, you're like, oh yeah, you're like trying to be loyal to these people, but then as you grow, you need to like it needs to spread. Like if the highest amount of streamers are getting all of the all of the views, and then all your sponsors want to hire only them, and they are getting X amount of money, which means you have less money to pay anyone lower than that, it is within your best interest to try and get as many smaller streamers up to that level. But then you have people butting heads because they're like, well, well, dude, you're taking away from, it just really,
it's not good.
Gosh, there's a word for it and I cannot get it.
Yeah, you'll find it and you'll ping me like 2 hours from now and be like, this is what I meant. It's like,
yeah, that'll be the title.
Or handicapping or just...
not like collusion. It's
not
like
collusion. There's a different word for it.
Yeah, it specifically was used in that where the
collusion
WGA.
I'm just thinking of that because I've been thinking about Magic Tournament a lot.
Yeah.
No, it's not collusion. That there's a different word of the idea of like just it's just self-enrichment through just shenanigans. I don't remember the word. Anyways, that being notwithstanding, people would be really mad at me if I didn't ask you about your show.
Yes, please. Yes, let's go.
So, what's it like, man? How you have this cool show called Actually. Can you describe it to the audience for a second?
Yeah. Actually is a pedantic game show where the host reads incorrect statements about nerdy topics, and the contestants are required to buzz in and correct me, but all corrections must be preceded by the phrase actually, or they don't get the point. Someone else can steal it. So it's like nerdy Jeopardy in a way, except you know, you don't really pick what you're doing. We're just reading it off.
It's
And
very
like,
forehead pushing.
yeah, and what's very fun about it is it's, you know, it is a panel show where people are able to like crack jokes and, you know, when we talk about their passion for these nerdy topics. But then also there's like the game show aspect too, where, you know, sometimes you'll know based on what you think is wrong, but sometimes what you think is wrong isn't what's wrong. So it's very confusing and fun in all that way.
Yeah, I love the idea of that, just nerdy game shows exist, because what do nerds want to do? They want to be the most pedantic, right? Like we want to be
Yes.
like, excuse me, there were actually 38 rings in Lord of the Rings if you
Yeah.
read the Silmarillion. And like, okay, bro.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's very fun. And you know, it's what's really fun is the way it's growing, because at first, you know, I feel like, you know, when we and Brian took over, you kind of had it morph where it is nerdy topics that kind of speak to us. That, and I was very surprised because, you know, we have a list of every nerdy statement that we've had from the issue, just so we don't do any repeats. And it's so interesting that without even having to check often, all of our like statements have been so different. Um, but even now, I think this next season is going to really hit it, because I found I think we hit the stride of like the very like specific kind of art to making an actually statement. I think that it's very easy to just make an incorrect statement that is just wrong. Which is just now it's like it's now just a quiz. But when
Yeah.
you have a actually statement, it should feel pretty much right, but one little thing is off. And we really injected that in this next season, because that's the one that stumps the super fans. You know, when it's something that it's just incorrect, then if you know the show, you know the answer. But if
Right.
it's something that is so close, but one thing's off, it's where your brain starts fighting with itself to try and figure out what actually is wrong.
That's I love that kind of thing so much, because it's just like it it really is like a nerd test. Like, how much do you actually know? Like, where is the like how what little nugget is the place where your line is of like, I don't know nothing past this. And I don't know, it reminds me of just like, because like I've because I don't have Dropout, I watch a lot of your stuff on the Twitter feed, and I like to watch the little questions go by. And it just reminds me of what my friends and I used to do in college all the time, when we'd be like, okay, so how many shows did Rumiko Takahashi? You know, it's like you want to get like, oh well, I don't know if you know this, but in college she did it. And you're like, you know,
Yeah.
I love that. I love pulling out random BS from God knows where that just undercuts your entire statement, because you're like, I guess I missed.
Yeah.
It's funny as hell, man.
Oh yeah.
You've got a really good presence. Like,
Oh, thank you.
you've got a really just. I like your style a lot, and like it makes me want to watch your stand up, because like it just seems really like funny. It's like it must have been really cool. Like if you've been listening to like WTF or whatever, and you're working on all these shows with all these stand-ups who show up on WTF, and being able to like just interact with them and stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. It's I think
I'm a
it's just
comedy
fun.
nerd. I
I
love
love
that stuff.
hanging around, being, and also just so you know, I have I it's conflict of interest. That is the phrase I was thinking of. Conflict of
Conflict
interest.
of interest.
Yes, that you
God,
have a
I told
conflict
you.
of,
I
yeah.
told you. If I just start talking other random BS, your brain's going to unlock the
Yeah,
one thing you needed.
conflict of interest.
Yeah, it's 100% conflict of interest,
Yes.
because it's like,
Sorry.
you're right. That's exactly what it is.
Yes. Sorry, not to jump back, but I just
No, no, no,
wanted,
no.
and
Please,
we'll
because
still,
people
people will still
scratch
tweet at
my
us
head and
because they're going to
whatever.
be tweeting along while they're listening, and then they're
Okay.
finally going to get to that part and go,
Okay.
ah.
Tell me about your comedy, man.
Oh man, my comedy is very like observational, very like you know, slice of life. I think a lot of, you know, when I was starting, I know someone was like, you know, your first year of comedy, you're talking about like, you know, your family and your this, and then
Mhm.
after that you get more and all. And so I was just, you know, you get a lot of rules when you do, like, it's so funny how many rules you get for creative things,
Yeah.
only to like go against it, and I also think that what's interesting about it is you kind of realize, like, oh, the more specific you are, the more you connect. And I kind of said this in Adventuring Party, but I'm gonna just, I guess, say it again, which is that, yeah, the hyper specificity connects way more than trying to create something that you think everyone is going to
Mm-hmm.
know and want to be a
Yes.
part of, because it is it is the hyperspecificity that locks onto someone else's very
Yes.
specific experience, even though it might not be the same. The similarities are in that specificity. So,
Yes.
that's just so in comedy. I think I found so much growth in my stand up when I started just kind of being myself and stopped trying to tell the jokes that I think are the jokes that
Right.
comedians tell. And so through that, yeah, it's just like anything that's kind of on my mind. It's like a very large range of things. It's about being a dad. It's about, being a nerd sometimes. It's, it gets raunchy at times. It gets very like, real at times. But it's been a fun time. And this show that I am doing or have done based on when this comes out in London is the first kind of like very cohesive, um, special slash set that I do,
Mm,
because before it's just like a lot of like my first album, Community College Dropout, I think was just a lot of just funny jokes. It was,
mm.
it started off at the intro of me, and then it was just like jokes, joke. And,
There's like a bunch of bits kind of in a row.
yeah, and African American is more the story about like, being being a father and how it made me connect with my dad and his quirks and differences, and also just understand him as an immigrant parent coming to America.
Let me tell you, as a dad who is the son of an immigrant parent coming to America, that relates very hard.
Oh yeah. You see it. It seems so corny to say, because I feel like all like parent idiosms, idioms, I mean,
Yeah.
they just seem the same, but it really is like through parenting, you see, since you're experiencing it, and the only thing similar about it is your experience as a parent. The child is always different. You
Yeah.
kind of end up in their shoes, and you get to understand kind of like where their head was at. And
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily mean that some things you're just going to agree with or forgive, but you will
No.
kind of know
Oh yeah,
where it
there's
was at.
definitely times when you're sitting there and talking to your kid and you're just getting angry. It's like, turn off the TV and read, and I'm like, oh
Yeah.
god, I've become my
Oh yeah.
parents.
Oh look, there are some like goofy, like my dad, when he used to wake me up, he'd be like, wake up, wake up, wake up. And I like did that one time, and I was like, I'm never doing that again. I don't know what that was. I don't like it.
Came from
It's
somewhere
done.
deep.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yes, yeah, yeah. Ooh,
Yeah.
let me tell you, man, it's like, I didn't come to this country so that you could. Yeah, it's like, no, come on, man, you've been here the whole time. Shut up.
Yeah.
Oh
Oh,
my goodness gracious me! But I don't know. It's really cool to watch, like you guys you and your crew starting to rediscover magic and like posting about it on Twitter more and like getting more open about it. Because like a lot of my magic friends who've been following you for a long time are just like, wait, what? What? Like suddenly it's like, oh, now we need to be friends now. What's going on?
yes.
But magic is just it's portable and it's easy to carry, which makes it much easier to just do things. Um, do you do any of those like live action D&D shows?
Oh man, oh yeah. So I just did today, as of recording this, which is the 28th, the season finale of Never Stop Blowing Up is going to be on Dimension 20 today on Dropout, and that's been fun, because I feel like I came into D&D a little later, because I've said this story multiple times, and I will continue to, because it's the funniest thing ever. But I went to school in Compton, California, but I went to Catholic school, and there was just this sheet of paper that they gave out of things that were of the devil or connected to the devil, and the two things that I just always remember is K-Rock, the radio channel that plays alternative rock music,
Yeah.
and D&D. And so, and also just I was in Compton, and my friend group, like in Compton, like where I was staying, was all just kind of like more jocks and like kids who were interested. And and when I eventually got to Downey for the short time I was out there and went to school, I didn't really know any D&D nerds. I was into like Zip Zaps. We were into playing Magic the Gathering. We were into, like that was our nerd bag, getting X mods from Radio Shack. Yep, that's a memory unlocking for a few people listening to this. So yeah, it was that, and like I used to be on this forum called Polycarbon BBS, which was it was a concept artist who had a tutorial site, and then they had a website where people were uploading their art, and then there were these things called Fight Club where you would draw pages of art, and then people would respond with their art. So technically I was RPing. Also, I was in a Cowboy Bebop RP forum. I did a lot of RP. I didn't do any TTRPG. I did it on the computer.
A lot of forum role playing.
Yeah, forum role playing.
I remember those days. I lived that life. Yeah. I didn't ask you, how did you find Magic in the first place?
Oh, I just truly the school was all about Yu-Gi-Oh! And I was just getting wrecked. I was tired of getting wrecked. I was like, I need something new. I need something fresh. And I walked into a Borders Books, and they had those deck packs for Onslaught. And it just looked so cool that I was like, oh, I need to see what this is about. And I bought one. And then I took it to school, and I was like, y'all got to get y'all some of these. This is so great. And so I was teaching everyone to play, but then beating everyone, feeling real good. And then eventually everyone caught up, and I was at the bottom of the totem pole again.
That first mover advantage only lasts for so long, does it?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a blast, dude. You were real funny, and it's been real interesting to watch you hanging out with all my buddies down there.
Yeah. We're going to have to hang out soon. You coming to Vegas?
Man. Yeah, of course I am.
All right, doing a panel, that's where we'll hang. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And for those of you listening, Vegas would have been like 2 months before this maybe a month before this coming out. I don't know. But it doesn't matter.
So this is going to be post Vegas after this.
Yeah, this is probably going to be post Vegas because I have somehow managed to get like 3 months of content in the can. So I'm just like,
oh yeah, then yeah, definitely. The London show was great. I hope you enjoyed. I'm actually at Magic Con. That was real fun.
Are you going to be doing a panel at Vegas?
I'm doing a live. I'm actually at Magic Con.
Oh, that's hella cool because I am also doing a panel at Vegas. You should
yeah. So we'll have to
hook up, and at the very least, we should jam a game, or really more realistically, we should say hi.
Yes, we're hanging out definitely.
So that's sweet, man. So if folks wanted to find you or your stuff, where could they go?
Oh man, you can just go to Ify Nwadiwe on all my social medias, and that's where you'll get connected to all the stuff that I do. Definitely check out all of my podcasts. I have a bunch. Max Film if you like movies. Our Relationship Pod if you like relationship conversations. TV Chef Fantasy League if you're into cooking shows. Bridgerton if you like the art, like the Bridgerton kind of like, it's an improv pod with a lot of Dropout faves. And I think that's it. I think those are all of them. I didn't miss one. And watch Commander Party.
Yeah, and you can also see him on like Commander at Home and on like the Shuffle Up and Play and basically everywhere everybody does Commander games because they all film down there. But yeah. And as always, my friends, you can find me at Gear Report Gears. You can find me on YouTube, anywhere, or you can find this podcast anywhere podcasts are sold, or at YouTube every Tuesday. Thanks to my editor, Dan. You can also hear me on Shivam and Wheeler Love Magic, where me and my buddy Ben Wheeler talk about every single set in the history of Magic for hours at a time. And you can also see me on the Chronicles of Dragonlance, where my friends and I talk about Dragonlance novels because I love the sound of my own voice. And with that, my friends, it's not magic without the gathering, and we'll see you next time.